We're going to take the to-do form that is currently defined in the app component and place it in its own component. I've created a new directory under source called components, and inside components another directory called to-do. In the to-do directory, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call that todoform.js. And at the top of my new file, I'm going to import React from React. Instead of creating a class that extends component like an app.js, we can define this component as a plain JavaScript function. So I'm going to declare a constant called todoform, and I'll just define this as an arrow function, and our return value will go inside these parentheses. Our return value is going to be the JSX for our form, so let's cut that out of app.js and paste it here. And I'll clean that up a little bit. And we need to export our component so we can use it in our app. So I'll come up here right before the const and add an export. And now that we're exporting our component, we can go into app.js and import it. So for that, I'll type import, and I'm going to put todoform in curly braces because we exported it with a name. And then we'll say from, and we need to provide a relative path, and that component lives under components/todo in the todoform file. And now that we've imported the component, let's use it in our JSX. So I'll come down here where that form was, and I'm just going to add a reference to todoform. I'm going to save this, and when the browser refreshes, it's going to be blank. And the problem here is that we have some errors that we have to handle. So if we take a look at DevTools, we'll see that we have this error, cannot read property handle input change of undefined. And this is because when we took that form out of our app component and put it in its own stateless functional component, we lost access to things that were defined on app through this. So handle input change still lives in app.js, and this .state inside this to-do form doesn't exist. When we need to pass data into a component that's defined as a stateless functional component, we need to pass that down through props. So we're going to update this function to accept a single argument, which we'll call props. And then we're going to update these references to this. So we'll say props.handle input change. And instead of this .state, this will also become props. And in order for this update to work, I need to pass these props into the to-do form component. So I'll switch back to app.js and find my to-do form tag. And I'm going to add a couple of properties in the form of attributes. So I'm going to say handle input change, and that's because this is what I refer to it as off of the props object. And I'm going to set that to equal a reference to the app's this.handle input change. And I also need to get current to do into the to do form. So we'll define a current to do property, and we're going to set that to equal this .state .current to do. And now that everything updated, let's save this. We'll let the browser refresh, and we'll verify that everything still works as expected. So our page renders, so we're on the right track. And if I come into my React DevTools, I should be able to enter text into the form and see that it updates my application state.